This is the Fifth Estate Tribe of Mentors, where each week we profile voices from around the world that can inspire and make an impact to us on the continent. This is an opportunity to reflect, an opportunity to find one's kairos moment. Kairos is an ancient Greek word meaning the right, critical, or opportune moment. The ancient Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. The former refers to chronological or sequential time, while the latter signifies a proper or opportune time for action. Kairos time calls for action, conversion, and transformation, a change of life. Kairos is a point of opportunity and favor, and God assists us in discerning the Kairos, this moment of grace. And we hope that these voices will help you along this journey. Today's Tribe of Mentor is Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Somebody has even said you're a masochist. Why do you want this job? And I've been doing tough jobs all my life, actually. Being a finance minister in my country is not a piece of cake, but it was a big honor to be able to do it and to help use policies to change people's lives. So that's why I'm here.
Dr. Ngozi was born in Ogwashi Oku in Delta State, Nigeria. Her father, Chukwuka Okonjo, was a king from the Obahai royal family. Her husband, Dr. Ikemba, is a neurosurgeon, and they have 4 children together.
You grew up for your early years in the village.
Yeah.
Can you paint that picture for us? What was it like?
Well, I grew up in the village because my parents both went to Germany to study, and they were on scholarship, so they didn't have enough money to take me. This was in the 50s, so they left me with my paternal grandmother. And it was, I didn't know anything different, so it was fun, it was hard work, but I had a grandmother who really loved me. And she was a disciplinarian, but you could see the love. And she made sure I did everything. I learned how to cook very early, how to go to the farm, go to the stream to fetch water because there was no running water at the time, how to fetch firewood, all those things, how to prepare. We used to get involved in preparing the main staple, in the country, which is gari, and we would learn how to process and prepare it. So it was, and then I went to the school behind our house. So it was a very happy childhood.
In March 2021, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala became the first woman and the first African to be chosen as Director General of the World Trade Organization. WTO members made history when the General Council agreed by consensus to select Dr. Ngozi of Nigeria as the organization's 7th Director General. Watch here as she told us why she was the most qualified for the job.
It's an honor and privilege to be here to share the views of my candidacy with the WTO members. All I want to say is that trade is important for the 21st century. It's important for prosperity, and is important for resilience, is important for sustainable growth. And the WTO is right at the heart of this. Therefore, we want to rejuvenate and reform the WTO to be the organization that it needs to be for the 21st century. I didn't get any questions about this, and I would not say there's a sense of divide. I would say that I'm proud of my continent for producing 3 good candidates, and that it's up to the members to choose on merit from all the candidates. So I don't think it's a divide. And of course, I hope I'm the candidate that is chosen and is backed, because I think I have the qualifications and the leadership characteristics to do the job. And I'm sure Africa will come behind my candidacy. The WTO Director General has no direct decision-making authority, but the WTO Director General can work to make things move along through influence. And that influence can be proactive. And that's the kind of DG, if I'm selected, that I intend to be, to use that proactively to work with members, to deliver outcomes, starting with the next ministerial, that would show that the WTO is back and the WTO is rejuvenated. So a proactively supportive Director General. The multilateral trading system and the WTO are in place to serve all members. And the hallmark of the WTO is fair, open, transparent, predictable, and stable trade. So the expectation is that trade should benefit all members. And where it does not, and where the South has been left behind, we should deploy the instruments that are available to make sure we enable countries in the South and members in the South to trade more, to derive more benefits from the multilateral trading system than they have. And were I to be selected as DG, I would be very keen to make sure that instruments like Aid for Trade, which involves technical assistance, capacity building, and working with other organizations such as the World Bank, the regional development banks, to be able to deliver to countries what they need to improve investments within their borders so that they can process their goods more, create more jobs, and have more to trade. That's what I would be doing to make sure the South improves its position and benefits from the multilateral trading system. Achieving results by the next ministerial, well, I would hope to encourage the membership to come to a quicker decision so that we'll have, whoever becomes DG will have more time to work towards the next ministerial. But even if it's by November, I do believe that some of the deliverables that one could have at the next ministerial are on their way. And I'm talking about the fisheries negotiations, where there are some outstanding issues. A lot has been done. A couple of outstanding issues to do with quote-unquote bad subsidies that encourage overfishing and overcapacity. That these could be, there could be consensus arrived at as to how to deal with these subsidies. And I think it's achievable within the time of the ministerial. I also think support to small-scale fisheries it could be achievable. Where there is political will, I think this is doable. With respect to all the problems, there was a lot of discussion of trust and building trust in order to move negotiations along. So it could be that one way to do that is to sequence reforms and have some succeed, some wins. And once we have a win or two, then we can proceed with things in parallel. So I believe that there is need for some sequencing in the beginning, and then could be followed by more reforms coming through. I would say to the president that the WTO delivered for all countries, including the United States in the past. It is because of the multilateral rules-based trading system that we have had prosperity and the lifting of millions out of poverty. And it's been shared prosperity. And we could do it again. Where the trading system, I would say to him or him, where the trading system has failed, we need to fix it so that it can be more inclusive, it can benefit more people. That surely it's not the time now to leave a WTO that matters. We need an institution that can promote a rules-based system. Remember the trade wars, I would say to him, of the past? We don't want that. We want peace and security and stability. That is why the WTO is needed, with its ability to arbitrate disputes within members. So don't leave now. Let's try to fix what needs fixing. And if we didn't have the WTO, we would have to invent it. That's what I'd say to him. I also said during my presentation that micro, medium, and small enterprises are very important, and the fact that there are discussions ongoing about how to better integrate them into the multilateral trading system is very exciting and very important. One crucial thing arising from COVID-19 and the impact it's had on economic growth and the shrinking, the predicted contraction of the world economy and economies all around the world is that these medium, small, and micro enterprises have been very badly affected. So they need liquidity. And we need to make sure that for them to survive, they should have adequate liquidity to keep their businesses going. My worry is that there have been countries globally who have been able to make this liquidity available to their own medium, small, and micro enterprises, and others, like many developing countries, including least developed countries, who have not. And one of my roles as a AU envoy has been with my other 5 colleagues, we are 6, to see how we can also facilitate and encourage additional resources from outside and inside to these medium, small, and micro enterprises, so that they can regain their position, they can stand, and they can not only keep jobs but thrive in the future to create more, because like you said, they create the most jobs worldwide. So I'm very keen. I think it's a very important sector, and the WTO should work hard to make sure that these types of enterprises are supported. If I get chosen, I hope it's a sign to not only to women and girls in my country, but to women and girls worldwide, that the world is ready and women can do it. The organization has not had a woman or an African as DG, and I think it's been led by men from developed countries for, if I'm correct, for 62 years, and 10 years men from developing countries. So if a woman, but my insistence is that choosing a DG WTO should be on merit. You know, it should be on merit. The best person to lead the institution that is having so many challenges should be chosen. Now, I would say to them, if that person happens to be a woman, great. If she happens to be African, great. But choose who deserves to lead. Thank you.
Dr. Okonjo-Iweala said a key priority for her would be to work with members to quickly address the economic and health consequences brought about by COVID-19 pandemic. Watch her acceptance here as she accepts the position.
I'm deeply honored and I'm humbled by the support I've received from WTO members.
To appoint Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala of Nigeria as the next Director General of the WTO, it is so agreed.
It's both exciting and daunting at the same time to be here, because I take the reins of the WTO at a time of great uncertainty and cannot be business as usual at the WTO. First and foremost, we need to focus on the issue of COVID-19 and what can the WTO do to contribute to solutions. Trade is very important, and is very important if we are also to come out of this pandemic, both in terms of helping make sure there's a freer flow of medical goods and supplies, but also for the economic revival. Without trade, it cannot happen. I must mention the fisheries subsidies negotiation, which is key, and it speaks to both sustainability of our oceans. It helps fulfill one of the SDGs. Every member agrees that the dispute settlement system needs reform. So, how I would set about it is to first try to work with members to tease out what their issues are. And once they agree that these are the set of reforms, we put together a work program to implement those reforms. must be mindful that whatever we do will benefit all members, not just big members or middle-sized ones, but also small ones and small island economies. Trade is about people. How do we bring those who have been excluded or marginalized, like women, like owners of micro, medium, and small enterprises into the mainstream? There's the need to modernize the rules of the WTO and bring them up to 21st century issues. We have to look at the digital economy, which has become so prominent during this pandemic. E-commerce is key and is going to grow in leaps and bounds as we move on. Let me just mention quickly traditional issues that not be forgotten. Issues of industrial subsidies, agricultural subsidies, special and differential treatment, will need to look into them. We need to look at our procedures, and parts of the institution. So much needs to be done. That is why I talk about deep and wide-ranging reforms. We also have the issue of lack of trust among members, which has built up over time. And we need to work through that if we are to achieve the reforms that the WTO needs to achieve in order to be relevant in this modern age. Being the first woman and the first African means that one really has to perform. If I want to really make Africa and women proud, I have to produce results. And that's where my mind is at now. How do we work together with members to get results?
And here, as she outlines how trade is so important for resilience and prosperity and sustainable growth.
Trade is important for the 21st century, is important for prosperity, is important for resilience, is important for sustainable growth. And the WTO is right at the heart of this. This is like a big plus. Choosing a DG WTO should be on merit. If that person happens to be a woman, great. If she happens to be African, great. I hope it's a sign not only to women and girls in my country, but to women and girls worldwide that the world is ready and women can do it. We want to rejuvenate and reform the WTO to be the organization that it needs to be for the 21st century. Thank you.
Dr. Okonjo-Iweala served twice as Nigeria's finance minister from 2003 to 2006, and then again from 2011 to 2015. Her achievements as finance minister garnered international recognition for improving Nigeria's financial stability and fostering greater fiscal transparency to combat corruption. In October 2005, she led the Nigerian team that negotiated the cancellation of 60% of Nigeria's external debt, a whopping 18 billion. And this was done with the Paris Club. The debt deal also included an innovative buyback mechanism that wiped out Nigeria's Paris Club debt and reduced the country's external indebtedness from 35 billion to $5 billion.
In 2005-06 to retire, help us do an innovative buyback. So we got 18 billion written up by the Paris Club. We bought back 12 billion using our resources. And, it all resulted in a 30 billion write-off. And it all came from the little trick done there. It was a wonderful way of smoothing out our expenditures and our consumption. And it worked. Now, another key cause of poverty, a fundamental one, is put forward by a school of thought that argues that Africa's poverty is due to a lack of progress on industrialization and Africa's inability to undergo the model of structural transformation experienced by the East Asian countries and China. This model was based on large-scale industrialization and export-led growth, in turn premised on education, skills, and a competitive labor force. In fact, Africa's share of manufacturing as a percent of GDP has stagnated around 10%, and the share of workers employed in manufacturing has peaked below that level. This phenomenon has been termed premature deindustrialization by African scholars such as Lopez and Coulibaly. According to Coulibaly, its causes could be, quote, the role of technological innovations in making manufacturing more capital and less labor intensive, as well as the impact of globalization and competition. As a result, labor moves from low productivity agriculture to low productivity services, bypassing the industrial sector. Furthermore, there's mounting pessimism about the likelihood of Africa being able to replicate the East Asian model. According to Joe Stiglitz, the reason the East Asian model cannot be replicated is that manufacturing is the victim of its own success. Developments in the sector have done so much to improve productivity in terms of output per man-hour that productivity has increased faster than demand. The result is that employment in manufacturing is now declining around the world, which means it can no longer support large-scale employment creation.
She was briefly the foreign minister in 2006 and the first woman to hold both positions. She spent a 25-year career at the World Bank as a development economist, rising to the number 2 position of managing director, responsible for an $81 billion operational portfolio, including Europe and Central Asia and South Asia and Africa. And this was between 2007 and 2011. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala has been listed as one of the 50 greatest world leaders by Fortune in 2015, the top 100 most influential people in the world by Time in 2014, the top 100 global thinkers in foreign policy in 2011 and 2012. She was the top 100 most powerful women in the world by Forbes 4 years in a row from 2011. She was also the top 3 most powerful women in Africa in Forbes in 2012 and the top 10 most influential women in Africa again in Forbes 2011. She was also Newsweek's top 150 women in the world and the top 100 most inspiring people in the world delivering for girls and women in 2011.
One of the questions I asked myself, as finance minister my second time around was, is gender mainstreaming really working? We talk about mainstreaming, and that's the right idea. Every sector, every minister in government should care about women. But is it really delivering the kind of results that we want, or is there another way? And I found that, look, there's one instrument that is very potent, which is the budget. Because I found the mainstreaming may not have been working the way we want. So how could we further empower girls and women using the tool of the budget? And when that realization hit me that, look, you actually have control of an instrument that could help. I spoke to the president and discussed with him the idea of using some additional resources within the budget to try and say to ministers who would volunteer, if you can get more results for girls and women over and above what you would have achieved, you will get as an incentive an extra amount of budget. And we decided to try it out, and it worked. 5 ministries volunteered. The Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Public Works, which was wonderful and surprising, the Ministry of Water, Health, Information Technology, and we all agreed, set out a results framework. What would they deliver? And I'll just give 2 examples of what this meant. In agriculture, the minister, who is now the president of the African Development Bank, wanted to empower women by getting
seeds and fertilizer to them so that they could improve their output directly. In my country in the past, you have middlemen, middle women who supply fertilizer from government, and most of the time the farmer doesn't get it. So he developed the scheme of what he called an electronic wallet, whereby through e-wallet, through the mobile phone, you could text vouchers to these women farmers, and then they could go to the nearest store and buy directly themselves. And so we agreed that he was targeting about 2 million women farmers. If he could do double that, he would get additional several $1 million as incentive. And this led to an additional 2.5 million more women getting on the e-wallet, getting access to inputs. That's just one example. The Ministry of Information and Communications Technology said they would train many more girls and women in coding, in both software and hardware management within our secondary schools, and they developed girls' clubs to do this. The Ministry of Public Works, for the first time, said they would train women to be subcontractors. You know, in public works, there are no women. They not only did that, they also trained women, female laborers, to participate. The Ministry of Health wanted to do more VVF, you know, vesicovascular operations, VVF operations. You know, this is a condition that affects young women when they have children too early and then they become incontinent, and it's very undignifying. But there are surgeries that can repair this. And we have many young girls and women with that condition. They were able to do 3,000 more repairs. So I could go on and on. So this, using the budget, and we initially just assigned $21 million to it, just brought so much in terms of additional results that empowered girls and women.
So financial incentives are always a great motivator. But are you seeing, as a result of that success, attitudes actually changing toward women and girls and their empowerment, particularly coming from men?
Well, you know, I'm no longer in office, so I can't say exactly what is happening now, but I think that in my country, like every society, it's a progressive journey. One thing I do want to say that characterizes West Africa is that women are very economically active. Maybe unlike other parts of the world, women are entrepreneurs, women are up and doing. In fact, they're so gifted as multitaskers. And so it's not as easy, you know, to take them for granted as you would wish. That being said, I still think there are cultural norms. I still think there are attitudes that keep women back. Women are not as active in some of the spaces as we would like them to be, in the political space, in legislature, you know, you need many more women, like in Rwanda, for instance. So where over 50% of women are legislators. In Ethiopia, where I think more than 30% are non. So we would like to change attitudes so that women can move more into the governance space.
Dr. Okonjo-Iweala holds an AB in economics from Harvard University and a PhD in regional economics and development from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, also known as MIT. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including honorary doctorates from Trinity College, Dublin, Brown University, and Amherst College. She is also the author of numerous articles and several books, one of them being Fighting Corruption is Dangerous and Reforming the Unreformable. And her most recent book was a collaboration with the former Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, with a book titled Women and Leadership. Take a look here as they offer some insights for women leaders.
Ngozi, 10 years ago when I became Prime Minister of Australia, I assumed that at the start there would be a strong reaction to me being the first woman, but it would abate over time and then I would be treated the same as every other Prime Minister had been. I was so wrong. That didn't happen. The longer I governed, the more visible the sexism became. I don't want any other woman to be blindsided like that. That's why I'm so excited about working with you to help women get ready to lead in what is still a sexist world.
I share that sense of excitement After I was finance minister of Nigeria, I was overwhelmed by the number of women who wanted me to be their mentor. It is terrific that aspiring young women are keen to learn from those who have gone before, but there are still too few female role models, especially women of color. Now, as a result of the work we have done together, I can offer everyone clear standout lessons that are based not just on my own experience, but on the global research on women and leadership and the candid insights of leading women.
One of the things to share is that there's joy in being a leader, in having the opportunity to put your values into action. Emphasising the positive makes a real difference to the power of role modelling. If we only focus on the sexist and negative experiences, women may decide that being a leader sounds so grim they don't want to do it. On the other hand, if we pretend it's all rosy and easy, women and girls can be put off because they decide leadership is only for superwomen who never have any problems. We all have to get the balance right. But Ngozi, it's impossible to talk about role models right now without asking you, how does it make you feel to see Kamala Harris elected as Vice President?
I'm delighted. It's important to the aspiration of girls and women that they see role models they can relate to. Vice President-elect Harris is exactly that kind of role model, particularly for girls and women of color. And every woman who steps forward makes more space for the women who come next.
Of course, both of us know from our own experiences that even when women get to the top, unfortunately too much time and attention will be spent on what they look like rather than what they do and say. Ngozi, for women, is it still all about the hair?
Certainly, Julia. I laughed when Hillary Clinton said she envied my dress style and particularly my signature scarf, so I don't need to worry about my hair. Like many of our women leaders, I've effectively adopted a uniform. It's a colorful one, it's African, it's me. I have developed my own style that I wear every day and I don't vary from it. That has helped protect me from endless discussion of my appearance. It's helped me to get people to listen to my words, not look at my clothes.
Hillary told us she lost the equivalent of 24 full days of campaign time in the 2016 election, getting her hair and makeup done every day. But actually, contemporary problems for women leaders go far deeper than anything to do with looks. I'd better warn you now, I'm about to use a word many people would find rude. My favourite funny moment in our travels was discussing resting bitch face with Prime Minister Erna Solberg of Norway. The global research shows that if a man comes across as strong, ambitious, even self-seeking, that's fine. But if a woman does it, then the reactions against her can be as visceral as revulsion or contempt. They're pretty mind-bogglingly strong words, aren't they?
They certainly are, and women leaders talk about it intuitively, understanding that to be viewed as acceptable as a leader, they have to stay balanced on a tightrope between strength and empathy. If they come across as too tough, they're viewed as hard and unlikable. But if they come across as too soft, they're seen to be lacking the backbone needed to lead.
The problem is we still all have sexist stereotypes whirring in the back of our brains. I was portrayed as out of touch because I don't have children. I was even compared to a barren cow in the bush, destined to be killed for hamburger mince.
That's horrible that you face that stereotype. While I was worried that people will think I couldn't do my job when my family was young, I enjoyed talking to New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern about her experience as the second woman ever to have a child while being a national leader. I was very taken by her saying she doesn't think she gets the work-life balance right, in the sense that she doesn't like the word balance, and there's always guilt. She just makes it work.
Ngozi, where are men in this?
Hopefully manning up. Men can more equitably share domestic and caring work. They can point out sexism when they see it. They can make space for women and mentor and sponsor them. Given that men disproportionately still have the power, we won't see change unless they work with us to create a world that will be better for men and women.
Let's talk about the glass cliff phenomenon. If a business or an organisation is going well, then they're likely to appoint a new leader who looks a lot like the old one, that is, a man. But if they are in difficulties, they decide it's time to get someone quite different and often reach for a woman. To take one example, Christine Lagarde became the first woman to lead the International Monetary Fund when it was in crisis, after its former head was arrested for sexual assault. Ngozi, while not as dramatic as that, you know a bit about glass cliffs too.
I certainly do. I remember clearly being chosen as a young woman to lead a very problematic World Bank project in Rwanda. No one else wanted to lead it lest they fail. So there was this attitude of, if she pulls it off, it's okay. If she fails, then well, she's just a young African woman whose career doesn't matter that much. From that experience, I learned things about myself and leadership. And the biggest lesson we can share is this. If you have a sense of purpose that drives you, then aim high, become a leader. And make room as you go. Former US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright is fond of saying that there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women. In this world, we need to be there for each other.
There is a bit of good news and bad news here. Certainly the research shows that the stereotype about the businesswoman who makes it to the top and then stops other women coming through isn't borne out by the facts. The constraint seems to be that organisations think once they've got a woman or two, they don't need to worry about gender anymore. But we do have to be frank. Women do get pitted against other women for the limited number of seats at the table. We have to be wary of having our solidarity with each other eroded by this politics of scarcity. Instead, we should work together to change the rules that keep us at the margins.
So to summarize, our standout lessons are, number one, there's no right way to be a woman leader. Be true to yourself.
Number two, we know that women leaders face sexism and stereotyping. So sit down with your mentors, sponsors, best supporters and friends and war game. How are you going to deal with the gendered moments? With being judged on your appearance, with being assumed to be a bit of a bitch, or with your family choices questioned? Forewarned is forearmed.
Number three, get everyone you know talking about gender stereotypes and debunking them. These false assumptions can't survive being held up to the light of day.
Number four, there are structural barriers too. Don't wait until you need help balancing work and family life or to be fairly evaluated for promotion. Be a supporter of systems and changes that aid gender equality, even if you don't personally need them immediately.
Number five, don't take a backward step. Don't shy away from taking up space in the world. Don't assume you're too junior or people are too busy. Reach out, network.
That's great advice and leads us to the most important lesson of all. Go for it.
Yes, go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ngozi once said, when I became finance minister, they called me Okonjo-Iweala, or trouble woman. It means I give you hell. But I don't care what names they call me. I'm a fighter, I'm very focused on what I'm doing and relentless in what I want to achieve. Almost to a fault. If you get in my way, you get kicked. So we wish her all the best in this new journey. Thank you for watching our Fifth Estate Tribe of Mentors. We hope that you're inspired. And remember, your life reflects your thoughts. If you change your thinking, you change your life.